in Dayton, Ohio, just recently, actually about 2 months ago. This guy has opened for Lou Reed, he's opened for the Beach Boys, and we're awfully damn happy to have him back here at Crackers. This is his third appearance here, ladies and gentlemen. Make him feel welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, from Nameless Cave, South Dakota, please welcome to the stage, Mr. Mike Lindsay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good to be here. It's good to be back in Indianapolis. I love this town. In fact, I did something today I'd never done before. Just a quick survey. Applaud if you golf. Anyone golf at all? Stupid friggin' sport. Hold on. Now, let me admit this before we go any further. I didn't even want to go golfing. It's just I had an ugly pair of pants, and apparently it's a local law. And I embarrassed myself, I'll admit that. I'd never been golfing before, and I got down there to that first hole, and the sign said, ball washer. I'll never make that mistake again. Let me just, like to broke my neck. Like I already said, I'm from South Dakota. We didn't have golf in South Dakota. In fact, the little town I grew up in, the only organized sport they had was a bowling alley. Now applaud if you bowl. Anyone bowl? Yeah. Stupid friggin' sport, huh? I didn't even want to go bowling. It's just I had an ugly pair of shoes, and frankly, the sign said ball polisher. So I'll only let that happen 4 or 5 more times because I don't have that many quarters. People think I make up the name of the place I'm from. There really is a town though called Nameless Cave, South Dakota. And if you ever lived in a real small town, I think you know that that life can be horrible for a kid. Worst part is everyone in a small town knows everything about you and your family. And if you come from an unusual family, now this is true. My father is Catholic. My mother is Hindu. Yeah, so for us it was father, son, holy cow. You know what I'm saying? It was like, oh yeah, you never knew whether to put that red dot on your forehead or the bingo card. And confessing sins from previous lifetimes is a bitch, I'll tell you that. Actually, I think the worst part about living in a small town was having to go to a small town high school. I lived in Nameless Cave, South Dakota. I went to Nameless High School. That's a little confusing for your cheerleaders because they have nothing on their chests. And our high school was so small they actually taught driver's ed and sex ed in the same car. So that brings a whole new meaning to the term parallel parking, I'll tell you that. I didn't get along well in high school, especially not with my guidance counselor. Do you remember him? The guy whose job it was to tell you what you're going to be qualified to do when you get out of high school? This is a true story. One time my guidance counselor called me into his office and told me that I had an attitude problem. I told him to suck my dick. Give me that attitude bullshit. Huh? Guidance counselors gave you those aptitude tests too. Remember taking those? Last one was the SAT or the ACT. I remember the very first one they ever gave us. In elementary school, we had to take a thing called the Iowa Test of Basic Skills. Have you been to Iowa? Iowa has nothing to do with basic skills. Now that's like sitting down to take the New York City Test of Common Courtesy. And they designed the test for idiots anyway. If you remember taking those aptitude tests, first thing you did is you had to open an instruction booklet where they spent an entire page explaining how to properly fill in an oval. I'm sorry, if you can't already properly fill in an oval, your basic skills are pretty much shit. Now pack up your number 2s and head for home, goober. I did like some of the questions on those tests, though. My favorite were always the analogy questions. Remember the ones that would start out, leather is to vinyl as cocaine is to extra-strength Tylenol. If you didn't know the answer, you just guessed. You filled in a little oval, except on the math questions. On math questions, they'd have that blank part on the answer sheet, and 3 words after the problem I used to hate. Show your work. I figured, hey, I'm an American. If I get the right answer, it's none of your goddamn business how I got it. I hated showing my work. I remember in algebra class, like ninth grade, you had to show your work on every single problem or they marked it wrong, whether you got it right or not. And I had one of those algebra teachers who was like 9,000 years old, and we called him Mr. Cadaver. And him and I never got along from the very beginning. It was a personality thing, because I have one. And there's one time Mr. Cadaver caught a couple kids in the back of the room laughing at some private joke, and he interrupted the whole class, gave a 5-minute lecture, and ended it with the stupidest thing I ever heard a teacher say. He said, "Now, is there anyone here who doesn't want to get back to solving quadratic equations?" Boy, on my list of wants, solving quadratic equations is right above having my pubes set on fire. And I figure, you can't get in trouble for telling the truth. So I was the only butthead who raised his hand. And Mr. Cadaver came over, he says, "Mr. Lindsay?" I said, I don't want to solve quadratic equations. He says, "Oh, what would you rather be doing?" Handing out towels in the girls' shower room? In front of the entire class, he said, "Mr. Lindsay, you are nothing but a useless blob of protoplasm." I told him to suck my quadratic equation and to show his work, by God. And I showed him. I got out of high school. I went to the University of South Dakota. I'm just bragging. And I had a major in business administration, and I had a minor in my dorm room. And I was studying to be an Ohio congressman, is what I was doing. And I don't know. Actually, I don't want you to get me wrong, because I'm not bragging or nothing, but before I started doing stand-up comedy, I was in convenience store management. Yeah, I was part of that group of executives known as slow urban professionals. I was a Slurpee. And now I get to do this. This is a much better job. Travel around the country, meet people from different parts of the country. I was just in the Carolinas. Boy, that's a beautiful part of the country, and the people are very nice. Except, I swear this is true, I was doing a show in Charlotte, North Carolina, and very, very nice, but I mentioned on stage the fact that Jim and Tammy Baker were from Charlotte, and a lady stood up. I didn't even tell a joke. A lady stood up and said, "You comedians had better just leave them alone. Jim and Tammy Baker have been through hell. You leave them alone." Hey, don't even feel sorry for them. You may not even realize this. They are making big bucks right now because Tammy Faye Baker and Spud McKenzie are the same person. Oh, you take Tammy Faye, hold her down, and scrub her real good. She's the pit bull that parties. A lot of you probably used to think Jim Baker was talking to the audience when he'd go, "Hail." No, that was for little Spud's Faye. Actually, my favorite of the TV evangelists is Jerry Falwell. Can we admit that he's a cheese weenie? Can we say that in public? He's a very well-intentioned man, but he's a garden weasel. He truly is. This is another true story. Jerry Falwell was on TV talking about teenage pregnancy. Teen pregnancy, it's a big problem. He looked right in the camera and said, "This is not just a problem with the poor. This is our sons and daughters involved, and many of them don't even realize it's happening." Wait a second, if they don't realize it's happening, that means there are people out there right now having sex, and they don't know it. How many times has that happened to you? Well, yeah, sure, you married folks, but the rest of us. Okay, we'll do a quick survey. Ma'am, are you having sex right now? She's not sure. You know what? You could be having sex right now and just not realize it. We should all check for the 5 warning signs of sex. Check for any of these 5 warning signs. Number 1, sudden loss or peeling of clothing. Number 2, increased pulse and respiration. Number 3, immediate loss of respect for your partner. Number 4, a feeling of oneness with the universe. And number 5, an inability to solve quadratic equations. How many of the flock are suffering? Of course, the ones who can't raise your hands at the moment. Religion's a weird thing. See, and people think I'm making it up too when I talk about my mom being Hindu and my dad being Catholic, but that was true, and I grew up in a small town. It was tough as a kid too because you heard the things from both religions and had to kind of pick and choose when you reached 12 or 13. And a couple major differences between the two. For example, like in Catholic church, we had confession. I thought that was a great idea because the way I understood it as a kid is, once a week you go in and you say, "I'm sorry," and you're out of there. For a whole week, it's like God is keeping track of you on an Etch-a-Sketch. Okay, Lindsay did that thing at the golf course. What? Oh, into the confessional? All right. I'm clean slated for another week. I thought... They don't have that in Hinduism. In Hinduism, we have a thing called karma. The way karma works is you go ahead and you sin, but you're going to have to pay for your sins. Maybe not in this lifetime, but you have to pay, which is kind of how I view my Visa card. Oh, maybe not this lifetime, huh? Catch me next time around. I guess the other major difference is the idea of heaven. The way I understood heaven as a kid in the Catholic Church was when you die, you go up and sit around on clouds with your dead relatives and listen to harp music. Ooh, party, huh? See, now, in Hinduism, they have a thing called nirvana. Nirvana has been described as a cosmic orgasm that lasts forever. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. It's a good thing you're dead, because that could kill a guy. But here I was, like 13 years old. I had to choose. Is heaven like a never-ending Guy Lombardo concert, or like having a stiffy with no guilt? And I don't know about you, sir. I went with the Big Bang Theory myself. Just the kind of kid I was. I actually can walk through the streets of my hometown with my head held high, though. I'm the most famous person ever to come from nameless Cave, South Dakota. Not for doing comedy. This is illegal there. But I was actually on national television a couple years ago. I was a game show contestant. Anyone watch a lot of game shows? Couple unemployed people? Good to have you. I love game shows. I always have. When I was growing up, my favorite game show, do you remember Let's Make a Deal? I used to watch that every day. I was in love with that girl on stage who pointed to the prizes. Do you remember her? Carol Merrill. Some of you guys remember Carol, too, yeah. Carol Merrill, otherwise known as the box that Jay is holding behind curtain number 3. Do you remember that show? I was on the most popular game show of all time, The Wheel of Fortune. Do you watch that? Yeah? Vanna? I've had her. No, come on. Oh, come on, like you guys haven't. But, no, I was on Wheel of Fortune about 2 years ago. I was on Wheel of Fortune. I hit that bankrupt space every single round. 4 times I hit bankrupt on the show. And when you lose on a game show, you're supposed to be very gracious about it? Bullshit. I figure I've already lost. What can they do to me now, Little Pat Sajak came up. He says, "Well, Mike, sorry you didn't win anything." Suck my quadratic function, Pat. I came all the way from South Dakota. I don't get shit. We have some lovely parting gifts for you. I got $90 worth of Moisture Whip lipstick. I got enough macaroni and cheese to pretty much feed Ethiopia. And they gave me a huge jar of KY Oroni, the San Francisco treat. Oh, you can moan. I'm stuck with this shit. Actually, I did get a Mr. Coffee Maker, which was kind of nice. Of course, being a bachelor, it took me almost 2 weeks to figure out how you cook macaroni and cheese in a Mr. Coffee Maker, but I think there's only one game show designed for the truly intelligent contestant. What's that? Jeopardy. See, I like Jeopardy. I think Jeopardy's a great show. And the host, Alex Trebek, I think he's kind of a smug little asshole, isn't he? Oh, he acts so superior, he's got the answers written on a friggin' card. I like the idea of Jeopardy, though. In Jeopardy, you don't answer questions. They give you answers, you come up with the questions. The answer is dippity-doo. What is the wet stuff you find on your dippity in the morning? Actually, I didn't go out for Jeopardy because they have tough categories on that show. Whole categories where I'd be lost. You see guys on the show going, I'll take Jewish basketball stars for 400. Yeah, give me intelligent people from Shelbyville for 1,000. Thanks a lot. I don't even know where Shelbyville is. Oh, gosh. I'm not looking forward to even going home, though. Anyone here ever had a roommate you just couldn't deal with? Have you ever had the roommate who was so damn picky about everything? You know, pick it up, put it away, a place for everything in its place. I finally had enough. I finally just said, Mom, I'm moving. Bitch pushed me too far. I'm out the door. Now I live alone. I live in one of those one-room chevettes. And it's not too bad, except that family that lives in the Pinto next door plays that AM radio all hours of the night. And actually, my mom's kind of a neat lady. I think maybe it's a small town thing. I was in the hospital recently. I had a little bit of surgery done on one of my eyes, and my mom came in and started telling the surgeon what he should be doing. And she was always, when we were little kids, any ailment, my mom already had the remedy. Like if we had a real bad cough when we were kids, my mom would make us eat a whole box of X-Lax. Which, well, no, it won't get rid of the cough. It just makes you afraid to cough. But loose bowel humor. Thanks. So it's great to be a comedian. This really is a great job. That I get to meet all you fine folks. I've been spending the whole week here and doing great things. And it's easy to be a comedian these days because you don't even have to write jokes. I mean, you just read the newspapers and see the stuff around you, and it's all funny. I was reading in People magazine. Applaud if you read People magazine. Anyone? Stupid friggin' magazine. No. I was reading in People. They did one of those special reader surveys that they do occasionally on sin and morality. Kind of interesting. They ask questions like, if one of those automatic teller machines accidentally gave you too much money, would you report it? 87% of them said they would. What a bunch of dicks! They also asked, how many sins do you commit in an average month? The average People reader said 4.7 sins per month. How many had a dozen from the door to your seats tonight? My favorite part, though, is they took 50 sins and put them in order of severity. You know, the worst sins were at the top, least objectionable down at the bottom. And it started with, like, murder, armed robbery. I swear this is true. According to People readers, cutting in line was a much worse sin than mercy killing. Yeah, so the next time you're at Kmart, just put that old lady out of her misery, yeah? Give her the old blue hair, blue light special. There you go. 8 items or less. I was kind of amused by the least objectionable sins. You can check these against yourself right now also. The 4 least objectionable sins, according to People readers. Illegally taping with a VCR. Drinking alcohol. Nude sunbathing. And masturbation. How many of you are doing at least 2 of those right now? The same ones who couldn't raise your hands from before, I guess. They had a statistic in there, I'm sure you've heard this 1,000 times over the last few years. They say, because of all the diseases, when you sleep with someone today, you're no longer just sleeping with them, you're sleeping with everyone they've slept with in the past 7 years. And everyone they've slept with in the past 7 years. And everyone they've It's like Amway. The only good thing to come out of that whole article is using that kind of accounting. I got laid 68,000 times last year. I just went double diamond, so we got an Amway crowd, good. Oh, it gets real weird, I think, when the government tries to get involved in telling us what's moral and what isn't. I think a lot of that started with Ed Meese, our former Attorney General, when he came out with that Meese Commission report on pornography. Remember that? That was the report where they stated that the naked human body is obscene. Hey, I have no doubt Ed Meese's naked body is obscene. Miss September's looking pretty good, and it was because of that report that they took all the dirty magazines out of 7-Elevens. Had to come up with more conservative, fundamentalist-type magazines. I guess the most popular one is one called Repent House. Have you seen that? Oh, Repent House is not aimed at a real hip crowd. I was thinking about sending a letter to the Repent House Forum column. Something like, Dear Forum, I never thought it would happen to me. Oh, a few readers, good. I'm a freshman at a small Midwestern Bible college. Last week I was enjoying fellowship with some friends when I saw her from across the room. She was built like a brick confessional. I learned from a buddy that she'd spent many a night with Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. A party girl in the biblical sense. It was my hope that she'd be interested in Acts too, and with any luck at all, this wouldn't be just another Palm Sunday. I walked up to her and used the oldest line in the good book, Your praise or mine. Well, soon we'd reached her apartment and salivation was at hand. Well, we'd barely made it through the door when I pulled out my King James. Well, I could tell that she was impressed, and soon we were taking turns exposing our favorite verses. She embraced my Tower of Babel, and I enjoyed her burning bush. Soon we both were speaking in tongues. Needless to say, I'd never had an experience like that one, except, of course, for the second coming, but that's a story that'll have to wait for another letter. Name and denomination withheld by request. Oh, it is tough to talk about morality. And I did used to get a lot of religion through the television. In fact, to this day, my biggest religious fear is that by the time I pass on and get to the pearly gates, St. Peter will have been replaced by Judge Wapner. Kind of frightening. How many of you were shocked when you first realized your parents were sexually active? Some of you are looking at me like, don't you be saying our parents are sexually active. This is a shock for my little brother and I, because we were little kids. What happened is it was a Saturday afternoon, and we were walking down the hallway past our parents' bedroom, and their door was closed, but I was about the right height to look through the keyhole. So I thought, what the hell? You got to get a look at this. They've been yelling at you for sucking your thumb. My mom hates that joke. She does. But she's not here tonight. I thought probably the most interesting question they asked in this People magazine article was about relationships. They asked, what's the most important thing to you in your relationship? And of course there were different answers for men and for women. What do you think was the most important thing in a relationship for men? Sex was number 3. Because men are liars. And as if to prove the point, number 1 was communication. Oh, that's rich. Yeah. Okay, flip it around the other way. What do you think was the most important thing in a relationship for females? Sex was number 7. Right after gardening. Money was number 4, because women are liars. Number 1, most important thing in a relationship for females was romance. Ladies, do you like a guy who's romantic? Some of you do. Most of you prefer the scum you're with. Is that the deal there? Is he a romantic guy? What sort of romantic things does he do? Say no more. I'll share this with the guys, especially the unmarried guys in the room. Pull out a piece of paper, write this down. This is the only solid piece of advice you will ever hear about male-female relationships. My grandfather's the one that told me this a long time ago. He said, Mike, there are only 2 ways to keep a woman happy, and no one knows either of them. Although this romance thing may be a key here. I think it is kind of important. And I kind of think of myself as a romantic guy, but we were looking at the article. My girlfriend was reading it with me, and she said, well, you know, Mike, you could be a little more romantic. And I was kind of offended by that, because I'm kind of a romantic guy, and we got in a huge fight. And right before I left to come here, I broke up with my girlfriend. And, well, I know you hear a lot of comedians say that they just broke up with my girlfriend. But, I got to thinking, you know, if I prove to her what a romantic guy I am, she'll want me back. And so you know what I did earlier this week? I sat down and I wrote her a love poem. Now, have you ever even tried to write a poem before? No, because you're a man. You don't write poetry. Drink beer, we fart. We don't write poems. Yeah. We're guys. Twice a year we go to Hallmark, sign our name on the card, and hope we get laid, by gosh. I'd never done this before, and you know how it was? I wrote it out late at night, woke up the next morning, you look at it, you think, what a piece of shit. You know? Not because you don't mean every word of it, just they sound so sappy, so mushy, and so I still haven't sent it to her yet, but I thought what I would do is before I go tonight, I'd share the poem with you folks. If you think she'll like it, I'll go ahead and send it off to her. I don't mean to bring the mood down right here at the end of my set. This is kind of touching. I call the poem simply, To My Love. To my love I send this note, filled with deep and warmest affection. You know I would have sent you more, but I couldn't mail an erection. Though miles separate us, my thoughts for you won't stop. Like a cherry on whipped cream, with me you'll always be on top. The first night of our union foretold what was to follow. We were like two lovebirds, me a pecker, you a swallow. My dear, you know I love you. Every way we've tried, and no bonds could be stronger than those strips of Naugahyde. I miss those tremulous moments when in your arms I've slept, dreading that little pill would fail to contracept. So, darling, ignore the cynics who won't dance to our love song. If they say sex is a pain in the ass, I say they're doing it wrong. Hey, thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Mike Lindsay! Let him feel your love. Mike Lindsay. What do you mean? Thank you, Mike. Yeah! Lou Reed, the Beach Boys. Ladies and gentlemen, he comes from Nameless Cave, South Dakota. Please give a nice warm welcome to the Cracker stage,